Hi, everybody. Rob here again for Power Learning Solutions. And in this video, I'm going to address some questions that I frequently get from some of my instructional design students, particularly in my courses where they work on instructional design pilot testing projects. And those questions specifically relate to the idea of blueprinting before you build anything to pilot, blueprinting your courses, and of course to what's actually involved with pilot testing and how much you should be building to pilot test. So some of those questions that my students ask are, exactly what is it that we need to build for this pilot testing project? What platform will we use? How much detail do we need to include when we're blueprinting or storyboarding? And which blueprint template should we use as part of our pilot projects? And these sorts of questions are not just relevant to students in my courses, they're relevant to anybody who's engaging in the instructional design for online teaching and learning process. Well, I have a couple of different blueprint templates that I frequently use and that I share with my students. This particular one here is a bit of an abbreviated template. You can find a copy of this in the chapter on pre-planning and designing in my Everyday Instructional Design ebook. You can check out the link to that in the description below this video. This is a good template, I find, if your institution or your client already has templates for crafting the content that's going to go on each page. And if they already have a standardized course template for what their courses look like and the content areas that need to be built, it's a good abbreviated template for that. Personally, I prefer to use this custom template that I have created using Microsoft Excel. It's a lot more detailed, but it's great for if you have no blueprint or no ready-made course shell templates, you're building completely from scratch. This customized template, which is also available in my ebook, allows you to add in all those granular details that you're going to need. And my general rule of thumb for how much detail should go in a blueprint is you should be able to give it to me or to another instructional designer. They should be able to take it and build the course without having to come back to you and ask any other questions. As much detail as is needed to actually build the course for you. So, what is the relationship between actually designing our courses, blueprinting them, and pilot testing them? Well, and why do we actually do it? Well, it's kind of like building a house. Instructional design for a course is very similar to building a house. So let's take a look at it in that house building context, and you'll probably then understand why blueprinting is so important and how it can be helpful to you and why pilot testing is important. Well, we start off, we've got a basic blueprint here. We know that we're going to be building a house. We know it's going to have walls and rooms. In a course building context, those walls would be the learning management system or the course platform that you're going to be using itself, the units, the subunits, lessons, the assignments, things like that that you're going to put in there. And there's also that question, what else do we need to put in here to make this a functional course? So obviously this little blueprint example that I have on the screen here right now just isn't going to cut it. There's not quite enough detail in here yet. Do we need to add doors? Do we need to add windows? Do we need to add electrical and plumbing? What kind of paint and finishes do we want in our house? The same questions apply when we're building and designing our courses. Well, I've gone ahead here and I've added some doors and windows in this, so it's looking a little bit more like a usable house. The next question then is, what are we going to actually put in each room when we have a general idea what the house is going to look like? What's going to go in each room or each space in the course? What is it going to actually be used for? So here we go. I've added some of the essentials that everybody is going to need. Now, in terms of course design, this is not the learning material. This is what I'd consider the front matter. Everybody needs a washroom in their house. Everybody needs a place to sit down and relax, a living room. They're going to need a kitchen, things like that too. Uh, that's the front matter for the course. You need to include that in your blueprint no matter what your topic is. I don't care if it's chemistry, if it's math, if it's English language arts. You need some of these essential front matter items like what's your course homepage going to look like and what student orientation materials are you going to include in there so that they can familiarize themselves and get up and running with the course and know where to find other essential information when they need it. Well, it's important for us to do this on paper before we start actually building anything in our learning management system or in our course design platform, because it's much easier for us to make design changes on the fly when we're still on paper, when we're still working with a blueprint. What happens if you're working with your clients or your stakeholders and they come back and they look at your blueprint and they say, hold on here now, I want a walk-in closet next to that bedroom. Okay, very easy to look at what that's going to look like on paper and quickly see, ooh, that's going to change some of the other major requirements and some of the other design elements that we had in here. That closet's going to jut into the bathroom, so I'm going to need to redesign some of the other general elements to make it fit. We also want to carry out blueprinting before we design a course, before we build a course, because we want to avoid something that is called scope creep. And that's where we have this tendency to keep adding in nice things into our designs that we think our students or our clients would appreciate that might not actually really fit with our overall needs. So in this case here in this blueprint, you can see a king size bed is just too big for the bedroom that we have designed. So now we can look at this, we can quickly see it on paper before we've wasted the time building it, and we can ask ourselves, is that king size bed really needed? Would something else like a twin size or a full size or a queen size bed do? Or do I need to change the overall structure because that king size bed is actually essential and we need to make it fit? Much easier again to do at the blueprinting stage than to go back and fix a course we've already built because we want to add something in. We also want to avoid adding in all these extra things that are just going to be too overwhelming and too much for our course needs. We also want to make sure that everything we're designing before we build it is up to code. Do all of the elements that I plan on putting into my course meet the institutional requirements for general design? Do they meet accessibility requirements that are mandated by legislation in my jurisdiction or that are just general good design anyway under WCAG web accessibility guidelines? We want to make sure of all of those things because it's easier to plan for them when we're still designing on paper in our blueprints than it is to go back and fix these things because we didn't include them later on. So what does pilot testing actually look like, and how much do we actually need to build and include in order to run an effective pilot test when we're designing our courses? This is a question that I often get from some of my students. Well, let's look at this again in relation to building a house. Maybe you're building a completely customized course, a one-off course, just like a customized house. So you're a general contractor and you have a client who wants a customized house built. What customized features do they want in there? What's it going to actually look like? Sometimes it's easier to show them rough sketches or blueprints or schematics in advance than it is to build it and realize that your client doesn't like it or it doesn't work for them. Some of these might include what are the cabinets going to look like? What colors are they going to be? What's the hardware going to look like? What lighting fixtures are we going to put in there? What paint colors are we going to use? It is much easier to show samples of these things in advance than it is to actually put all of these things together and have to rip them out and rebuild them because they're not working. Well, maybe we're actually looking at a general contractor who is actually building an entire neighborhood and they're trying to sell houses to clients. Well, in that case, what they'll have to do is show you what they call a show home. And in that show home, they're going to show you the general look and feel of what your house looks like. This is often the case when universities or other institutions have their design templates for what all their courses should look like in a standardized way. But then you can go in and you can choose some of those customized features that you want before you go and you build that home. That's what pilot testing can look like in some instances. Well, I often get this question from some of my students. I've already planned out everything for my course, all of my 6 units or all of my 12 weekly units or 13 weekly units, however long the course is going to be. Why don't I just go ahead and build it? That would not be a good idea. We never do that. If you make a mistake in your first unit that you're building, then that mistake in your design is going to carry through to the rest of what you've built. It's an incredible waste of your time and of everybody's time if you have to go back in and find that mistake and fix it everywhere that you've made it, and to tweak your design plans and change them in all those units that have already been built. So you would never go and build the entire course before you pilot test it. What you would do instead of building and pilot testing the entire course is you choose a small section of that course that you want to build. You build your front matter, you build one of those units to pilot. You use that pilot unit as a template after you've gotten the feedback from your pilot testing students. What works, what doesn't work, what needs to be tweaked. You use that as a template, then you go back and you finish designing and then building the rest of the units. That's a much more efficient use of your time. That's why it is so important to pre-plan everything in advance before you start building it, and then to take the time and test out just the right amounts of it so that you're not wasting time, not wasting resources, and you get the best return on your investment for the time it takes to design and build your courses.